The process of facing our fears is a critical component of being a strong leader and empowering the teams and individuals who look to us for courage. But how often do we face our fears? When was the last time you held a tarantula, or went cliff diving, or performed stand-up comedy? Our next speaker is Michelle Poehler, who decided to face all of these and more in her project 100 Days Without Fear. As the founder of Hello Fears, Michelle has begun a social movement to empower others to move beyond their comfort zone and tap into their full potential. Michelle has intimately explored the role of fear in our lives, the different types of fear, and what it means to be brave. When we can change our perspective on what we're afraid of, we can create new potential for success. Michelle has spoken at Google, ESPN, Netflix, Toyota, and many more, reaching over 70 million people worldwide with the message of experiencing life to its fullest. That's why the Global Leadership Summit is excited to welcome Michelle Poehler.
Thank you so much. Thank you to those who danced and to those who didn't. Actually, the idea was for no one to dance. So raise your hand if you thought that was a little bit awkward. You're like, why is she dancing? I don't want to dance at this time, please don't. Okay, so the idea was to get you all uncomfortable so you can experience what the comfort zone is all about, and then I can teach you how to get out of it, so you're doing great. Well, before we get into comfort zones and all of that, I need water. Right? Too much dancing. Somebody else? I saw some people here at the front also. No? Okay, much better. So, I want to ask you something. Do you guys remember your earliest memory of fear? If you could go back in time and try to remember a fear you had when you were very little, maybe 2, 3, 4 years old. Who here was afraid of clowns? Raise your hand. Okay. Who here was afraid of the dark? Some of you. Who here is still afraid of the dark? Well, my earliest memory of fear goes all the way back to when I was 3 years old. And I still remember how terrified I was to walk down the aisle. Not as the bride, but as the flower girl, of course. You would assume that a 3-year-old girl would be delighted to wear a big white puffy dress just like the bride and throw petals everywhere, right? Not me. I was afraid to walk by myself and not be able to find my mom at the end of the aisle. So at the age of 7, 4 years after that picture was taken, my parents had a hunch that my shyness was not necessarily emotional. So they took me to the doctor and they found out that I couldn't see, like at all. I needed glasses. So for 7 years, my comfort zone was defined by a 10-foot radius circle that surrounded my mom or my dad. So parents in the audience, if you have a really shy kid, take them to the eye doctor, because maybe that's it. But you know what? We all have a comfort zone, and we know it pretty well because we live there most of the times. We know exactly where it starts and where it ends, and they are unique to each person, like your body or your personality is. So the things that are uncomfortable to me may be things that you can easily do. For example, eating an oyster, which I had to say that I tried, and then I couldn't, so I had to spit it out. It was not pretty, and then I had to try the same one again and again, because they're so expensive. Also, doing things like slow rafting can be pretty terrifying for some people, mostly when you're trying to take a selfie. Yeah. But the good news is that comfort zones can change from one day to the other. They can expand as we face our fears or contract as we limit ourselves. And the truth is that for the first 2.5 decades of my life, my comfort zone was shrinking by the second. So I had a lot of fears, but it was not really limiting my life in a major way because to me, life felt like a checklist that I had to go through according to society's expectations. Graduate from high school? Check. Go to college? Check. Find prestigious job, get married, buy a home, have kids, right? I was doing everything I was expected to until it hit me. Who am I checking these boxes for? Who am I truly living for? I see that my parents, my professors, my mentors, they're all certainly happy with my outcome, but am I? I can say that I'm comfortable, but can I say I'm genuinely happy? So a few years ago, I realized that I had two options. I could continue checking society's boxes like it was expected of me, or I could have the courage to create my own set of things and pursue those as well. Move to New York, give a TED Talk, become an entrepreneur, travel the world, write a book, impact others. So I was eager to start checking all of my boxes, except that there was only one obstacle, and it was fear, or better yet, my unwillingness to face my own fears. So in 2015, I decided to embark on a project that changed my life for good. It is called the 100-Day Project, and the idea is that you choose one thing that you want to do repeatedly for 100 days in a row. It can be anything, as long as it's something that helps you grow or improve in some way. So I know you're already coming up with ideas in your mind. What would I do for 100 days? And there are so many projects out there, very, very good ideas. For example, 100 days of gratitude, 100 days of self-love, 100 days of meditation, or whatever it is that you want to work on. In my case, I wanted to become a braver person, not only for myself, but for my family and for my future kids. I come from a family of World War II survivors, where half of my family were killed by the Nazis in concentration camps. My grandparents were lucky. They were able to escape and start a new life from scratch in Venezuela, where I'm from. So shout out to Venezuelans and the entire Latin American community watching this today. But yeah, so imagine this. My grandparents go from Europe to Venezuela. They start from scratch, but their fears, they don't go away. They actually get carried from generation to generation. So my mom was raised with lots of fears, and so was I. So when I heard about the 100-Day Project, I knew this was a perfect opportunity for me to go after my fears, break my family's fear chain, and become a braver person. So I decided to face 100 fears in a period of 100 days and document the entire process on YouTube. From the smallest things that were limiting my everyday life to fears I never thought I would be able to conquer.
Michelle Polar decided that she was sick of living her life in fear of the unknown and the unexpected, so she decided to embrace it every day for 100 days. She's pledged to do something that scares her.
I'm here with Michelle Polar in Times Square, New York City, where she is living 100 days without fear.
100 miedos en 100 días.
Michelle decided to spend 100 days conquering her fears. 100 days. What I really believe that Michelle is experiencing is tapping into her inner strength that was there all along.
Thank you. So if you guys thought that was scary, uploading the videos to YouTube, that was a whole fear by itself. Picture this, day 40 of the project. I wake up, check my phone, and the first thing I see is my face all over the internet. Websites all over the world started sharing my story, my project, my videos, and not only websites, but also celebrities started to post about this on their social media as well. Ashton Kutcher, Sofia Vergara, Zoe Deschanel, and for some reason, even the rapper Lil Wayne thought this was inspiring. But this was not the best part. Shortly after this happened, I started to receive messages from people all over the world saying that thanks to my project, they were inspired to go after their own fears and change their lives. This is something that I was not expecting because I was not trying to inspire anybody. I was doing a very personal project and I was just being terrified on camera every single day. But trying to understand what exactly was impacting or moving so many people, I learned the biggest difference between these two words, fearless and brave. And this takes me back to my days in advertising, okay? Because before becoming a speaker, before facing my fears, I used to be an art director working at an ad agency. And I remember my first boss right out of college, Andrew, he was pretty fearless and even reckless at times. So his ideas and his ways of doing things would constantly put the team and the agency at risk. So we had a really hard time trusting him and looking up to him, and eventually he got himself fired. That's when I met my second boss, Mark. And Mark was the complete opposite. He would always go with the safest idea, he avoided confrontation, and he despised change. We all needed Mark at that point. It was like, yay, Mark. But then at some point, it was uninspiring to work with someone like that. So looking back, what I realized is that I had a fearless boss, and then I had a fearful one. But what I never had was the opportunity to work with a brave leader, someone who dares to be clear, vulnerable, and transparent, but is also willing to fight for valuable ideas and welcomes change. Someone who, despite the fear, has the courage to take action. Because that is exactly what was happening with my project. I was not showing up fearless on camera, on YouTube every day, facing all my fears. I was terrified, and people could connect to that feeling, the feeling of fear, of being vulnerable. And that's what I want to teach people. It's not about becoming fearless leaders, because at the end of the day, I don't think we can become fearless. At least I cannot become fearless. I tried. It's not possible. But I think that we can all be brave. And the best way to empower the people around us, our team, even our kids at home, is not by hiding our fears, our vulnerabilities, and saying things like, you can do this, we're here for you. No, it's by showing your own, your own fears, your own insecurities, and then showing those people your courage. That you're willing, despite the fear, to go and face those fears and be brave. And that, there's nothing more inspiring than that. And now, I could share literally 100 stories with you, but we only have 30 minutes today. So I'm going to go to share with you the last fear, number 100, okay? So for this one, my last fear, I was approached by a big brand here in the US that wanted to sponsor my 100th fear. My first reaction was to be excited and on board, obviously, right? Until I realized they wanted to have me rappel down from Rockefeller Center. Yeah, in New York City. That was like their big idea, and I still consider it. I mean, this was a big opportunity. They were going to turn me into an influencer from one day to the other. My face was going to be everywhere, and they were even going to pay me money for me to face my 100th fear, which sounded really cool at that time. But something deep down didn't feel right. I wanted this last challenge to go beyond a physical fear and have a more meaningful impact. So after much consideration, I decided to decline the brand's offer, and instead, I faced one of my biggest fears, public speaking. And I decided to do it at TEDx so I could share my story with the world and inspire hundreds of thousands to go after their fears. This decision not only marked the beginning of my speaking career, but it showed me the importance of going after the things that feel right in our hearts, not being carried away by what may seem more glamorous. So let me take you back to the day when I faced my 100th fear. Right there. My heart was beating so loud at that point, you could almost hear it. Could you almost hear it? Yeah, right? It was super loud. So at that point, the girl that is walking along with me, her only job was to make sure that I'm doing all right. So when she looks at me and smiles at me like, Michelle, let's do this. And I don't smile back because I don't want to do this. I'm regretting my decision to be here in the first place. I just want to go back home. She grasps my shoulders and she's like, sweetie, this will be awesome. I promise. Think about it. What's the worst that could happen? Are you serious? Raise your hand if you've ever asked yourself or someone else this question before, right? Yes, be honest. Worst question ever. I now had like 1,000 negative thoughts in my head that were not there before. Because I was like, she's right, what's the worst that could happen? And then I'm like, wait, what if I freeze? What if I forget my speech? What if I disappoint my family who's in the audience, who traveled just for this event? What if I embarrass myself? And the worst one, what if I fail? That's when it hit me. How am I supposed to gather the courage that I need if I'm only considering the worst case scenarios? It was only when I decided to flip the question around and I asked myself, Michelle, what's the best that can happen? That's when I started to see the possibilities that were hiding behind my fears, and I thought, what if I do a good job? What if I enjoy it? What if I make my family proud or myself proud? What if I actually inspire people in the audience to take action? Suddenly, I felt no more fear, only excitement. And that's when the presenter said, give it up for Michelle Poler. And that day, I got my first standing ovation, and the rest is history. Thank you. So when I first started this project, I thought that the end goal was to eliminate fear, get rid of it. But along the process, what I realized is that fear is our ally, and it's there to keep us safe and alive, so we don't want to eliminate fear. But the more we open ourselves to the unknown, the more we allow growth to jump in. And the most important thing here is to make sure that we can keep fear in its place and not let it hold us back from making all of those growth decisions. Because to me, the 100-day project was only the beginning. But now, instead of perceiving every fear as an obstacle, I choose to see it as an opportunity that can lead us to uncover our next big thing, and that is the best that can happen. Now, as a way to better understand my fears, what I did is I divided fear into 3 categories: universal, cultural, and personal fears. Turns out we're all born with a set of universal fears. Doesn't matter where you're from or how old you are, you're probably afraid of either spiders, yep, needles, and the very popular fear of heights. So raise your hand if you are afraid of at least one of these, and you should be, because they can totally kill you. So yes. Please be afraid of those fears. As we grow, we develop a series of cultural fears that revolve around our need for love and belonging. And these are the ones that are screwing us up big time. You know, every culture has its own set of rules and expectations from society. Don't do this, don't say that, don't wear that, right? Society creates fears to make us behave in a certain way and shape our personality to fit its standards. So the fear of not belonging, not fitting in, not being loved or accepted are dictating the majority of the choices we make and the way that we present ourselves to others. And I get it. Belonging can be amazing. It's what enables community, friendship, team building. But if we're not careful, our need to fit in may hurt our authenticity. And we live in a time where authenticity is one of the most valuable assets that anyone could have. Just a few years ago, when I started speaking, I was invited to speak at ESPN. I was very excited and nervous as usual, but then something happened before it was my turn to speak that took all of my confidence away. The speaker that went right before me was the most exceptional speaker you could think of. Carla is a vice chairman at a huge financial institution, and she's a renowned author. So she was witty, eloquent, insightful, experienced, literally everything you want from a speaker. So the more I heard her present, the more I kept comparing myself to her, until I started to feel like the biggest imposter in the room, hoping not to get caught during my presentation. At the end of the day, I was ready to go home, forget about this experience, when the organizer of the event asked me to stay and go to a happy hour event with the attendees. I was hesitant to go, and so glad that I went. That night, so many people approached me to tell me that I was the highlight of the day for them, that I was perceived as a real person they could identify with. And that's when I realized that my imposter syndrome was making me believe that I needed to be more like Carla to be appreciated, when in reality, I just needed to become myself and own what makes me authentic. Which reminds me of a few words from Steven Pressfield in his book, The War of Art. Our job in this lifetime is not to shape ourselves into some ideal we imagine we ought to be, but to find out who we already are and become it. So what I realized is that while I was comparing myself to Carla and other speakers out there, I couldn't find my place, and I thought there was no place for me in this industry. It was only when I decided to contrast instead of compare that I was able to not find my place, but to create my place. You know what? Because when we compare, we are all the time looking what everybody else is doing, right? But when we contrast, we get to see what they're missing. When we compare, we're looking outside. And only when we contrast, we get to look inside. And at the end of the day, when we compare, we become one more. But when we contrast, we become one of a kind. So what makes you different, right? What makes you stand out? I mean, is it your background, your story, your sense of humor, your sense of style, or your values, your hidden talent? Because, you know, what we realize is that when we compare, we become victims or prisoners of our own insecurities. And it is only when we contrast that we set our authentic selves free. Which takes me to the last set of fears, the personal fears, that are closely related to our self-esteem need. In order to feel good about ourselves, we limit our growth. We hold ourselves back from taking risks, from trying new things or venturing into the unknown, because we know failing is a possibility, one that we don't want to be held accountable for. But after embracing this new lifestyle where daring is now my first choice, what I learned is that the enemy of success is not failure. It's actually comfort. Comfort is what keeps us from innovating. It convinces us to continue doing things the same way we've always done them instead of adapting to a new reality. Comfort begs us to look down at our phones instead of sparking a conversation with the person sitting right next to us. And it tells us things like, good things come to those who wait. But as Da Vinci put it, people of accomplishment rarely sat back and let things happen to them. They went out and happened to things. Which takes me to my last day 101, right? The day the project already ended. I already faced my 100th fear, delivered my speech. Now what? People started asking me, and I had no idea. I only planned this far. Day 1, day 100, that's it, right? So day 101 came, I was lost. I thought about going back to my old job in advertising, but I quit on YouTube, so that was a really bad idea. Don't do it. And then my husband, Adam, he came and he was like, wait, what if you continue growing this movement? You turn it into something bigger, and then you make this your job. What if you could inspire people for a living? Suddenly, I started going through a roller coaster of emotions, and guys, I hate roller coasters. Yeah. Do you see how miserable I was that day? It was horrible. And then Adam was so happy, even though he was holding the camera and everything, he was having a blast. And then that other guy, he was so happy that day. I wanted to be him. So I don't know if you've ever been in a situation like this. You have two options, and the one you want the most is the scariest one. That's how I was feeling. So going back to my old job or building a movement. Going back to my old job would have been, for me, a decision based on fear, safety, and comfort. Building a movement from scratch was a decision based on growth and progress. Life will always give us options. Some will take us back into our comfort zones, others will challenge us, but help us grow. The important thing here is to identify which one is the growth option and choose that one, despite the fear that it may bring. Because most of the times, the growth option is the scariest one. So that's how I tell them apart. And according to psychologist Jeffrey Gray, there are two primary systems determining and influencing every decision that we make. the behavioral inhibition system and the behavioral activation system. So the behavioral inhibition system responds to risk, stopping us from taking action. And to give you a very simple example, when I started the presentation, dancing all crazy, and I asked you to join me, those of you who decided to stay in your seat, you were reacting to the behavioral inhibition system, thinking of all the possible risks involved in this decision. Like, what if I draw too much attention to myself? What if I embarrass myself? Or what if I'm having too much fun and then I can't stop, right? You see, it's so relatable. Now, those of you who decided to stand up and join me, right, here in the audience or at home or wherever you're watching, you guys were reacting to the behavioral activation system that responds to reward and encourages us to take action. So in that split second, you thought about possible rewards, like waking yourself up, getting some energy, showing off your moves, or maybe doing something that you're very afraid of and that will make you feel proud of yourself later. So what we learn is that those comfort-based decisions that we make are tied to the behavioral inhibition system. And the growth options, the growth choices are triggered by the behavioral activation system. So the question here is, how can we put growth into motion? And the answer is right here. You have to focus on the reward. And to do so, I ask myself the question, what's the best that can happen? Again and again. Because if you think about it, when you're about to face a fear, you're about to step into the unknown, maybe you're about to have a very honest and hard conversation, you're about to ask for a raise, you're about to say yes to an experience that you're unsure of, whatever it is, in that moment, all of these negative thoughts and fears start to pop into our head, and it builds a brick wall. Every brick is a different fear, telling you, don't do it, you will regret it, who do you think you are, you're not good enough, right? All of these things we tell ourselves. But when we ask ourselves, what's the best that can happen? We get to see through our fears, through our brick wall, focus on the reward, and that's the only thing that encourages us to take action. And what I learned is that the more uncomfortable we get, the greater the reward. It was only when I got really uncomfortable and decided to commit to this project full time that I started to see real impact. Something that started as a personal project turned into my purpose, a social mission that is encouraging people all over the world to say hello to their fears. And I would love for you to be part of this movement.
Hey Michelle, my name is Marcin and I'm from Poland.
My name is Evelyn Lawrence.
Jason Silva.
Hey, it's Chris Gillibo, and I'm from everywhere.
Panama.
Colorado.
Canada.
From Africa.
I'm Dutch, but I live in the south of Spain.
I faced the fear of writing to a girl with whom I haven't spoken to for a very long time.
I faced my fear of
traveling solo on a 3-month trip.
Fear of rejection.
Like I'm not good enough.
I fear of birds.
Skydiving. Cliff diving.
Get this pixie haircut.
Dance like nobody's watching.
Starting over at 29 years old. Me against the world.
Volunteering abroad for 6 months.
I wanted to do something more meaningful and I switched career.
I faced my fear of leaving home.
Of moving away from home.
To start from scratch for the second time.
I was deathly afraid of speaking in public.
Following my passion, pursuing my bliss, right? Living within the confines of my inspiration and somehow trusting that things will work out in the end.
The biggest fear that I faced is living alone, all by myself, with my own thoughts. And it's felt amazing.
It felt terrific.
Awesome. Feel passionate.
Beyond amazing.
And I feel free.
So fulfilled.
Felt so satisfied.
I have done more living in the last 3 years than I have in 33.
Came home and felt more like myself than I have in a really long time.
I feel so good now.
I'm so grateful because my husband and children helped me cross that bridge.
And how I've felt since? Fantastic.
I learned to love myself as I am.
Now it's time for my big fears.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now I want to take you back to this slide from the beginning. We could say that I moved to New York, that I gave a TED Talk, became an entrepreneur, which led me to travel the world, impact others, and as of last year, officially, we have a Hello Fears book available almost all over the world, which makes me feel so proud of myself. And the reason why I'm showing you this is because, do you know what this means? I checked all of my boxes. It means I need to write new ones. Okay, so we both have homework to do because that's what I want you to do after this conference. I want you to start writing your own boxes. What are the things that you want to accomplish for yourself? And the real question here is, what would you get uncomfortable for? What are those things you care so much about, you're willing to get uncomfortable to make them happen? And now, to finish this off in the best way possible, we're going to do the same thing we did at the beginning, but now you guys will join me, okay? Because that was a little bit unfair and uncomfortable. So I need all of you to stand up right now here and wherever you're watching this. Yes, let's go, let's do it. Are you ready? You need to dance like no one's watching, okay? 1, 2.